Look, there's a really good chance your business is way less profitable than your financial dashboard is telling you. Let's be real for a second. Dashboards, they're practically designed to make us feel like geniuses instead of telling us the hard truth. Your numbers might look amazing, not because someone's stealing from you or your revenue is fake, but because your entire decision model is just quietly ignoring the most massive, invisible expenses operating inside your system. So in today's explainer, we're going to uncover exactly where all that money is hiding in plain sight. You know how this usually goes? The end of the month rolls around, management gets together, stares at a positive number on a screen, and everybody celebrates. Bonuses get approved, right? But behind the scenes of that little party, the business is quietly bleeding. It's bleeding production capacity, employee time, and its own future value. The numbers, sure, they look great right now, but that's literally only because you've systemically stopped counting everything that's just too inconvenient to measure. And here's the central mistake most companies are making. They run on a dangerously simple, flawed equation. Revenue minus direct, visible costs equals profit. Now sure, those visible direct costs, things like your raw materials, server hosting, software subscriptions, those are super easy to track. But they are just a tiny fraction of the actual economic math. The real economic result subtracts all the indirect costs, the hidden friction, the failure costs. If your spreadsheet just leaves all of those out, you aren't actually profitable. You're just beautifully delusional. So let's look at how these invisible costs actually trigger a chain reaction. And it usually starts with rework. This is that painful, everyday reality of fixing mistakes twice. Think about just a simple 10-minute error during a client handoff. That error doesn't just cost 10 minutes of someone's time, it creates a massive, invisible cascade. You've got detection, back and forth emails, the actual fix, and then, that awkward explanation to the customer. Suddenly, that tiny, untracked 10-minute mistake, it's generated 2 solid hours of pure organizational drag. And naturally, all that rework inevitably causes severe delays downstream. And the crazy thing is, delay is almost always treated as a free expense by management. Why? Because you never get an invoice in the mail that says, hey, delay, $4,000. But waiting aggressively eats up your capacity. It burns through customer patience, blocks your project sequencing so other teams are just sitting there idling, and it quietly destroys future sales opportunities. All of this happens without ever printing a convenient little receipt for your accounting team to track. Now, when customers are delayed, frustrated, and totally confused by these broken handoffs, what do? They generate completely preventable support tickets. Look, customer support is great when it's actively adding value to the relationship, but when your support volume is just driven by confusing onboarding or broken operational promises, that becomes a massive economic leak. And when those frustrated customers eventually just give up and abandon you because of the friction, the financial hit to your customer lifetime value and future retention is absolutely staggering. Eventually, all this compounding friction just breaks your internal engine. When you've got broken systems full of delays and rework, what happens? Your best people try to compensate by working harder. They absorb the chaos right up until they simply burn out. And when that top talent inevitably leaves, you are forced to pay the massive, hidden subsidy of recruiting, interviewing, rehiring, and onboarding. And that's not even mentioning the fact that you're losing years of irreplaceable institutional knowledge. So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is a concept we call the slow currency profit illusion. You see, a cost doesn't miraculously stop being real just because it's missing from your accounting view. The business pays for these internal failures anyway. You're just paying in slower currencies. We're talking currencies like lost profit margin, burned internal capacity, destroyed customer retention, and a damaged brand reputation. Bottom line, you pay anyway, just more slowly. Now, if you caught our previous explainer on this exact topic, which was V41, you know we looked deeply at how to detect when a system is slowly deteriorating or drifting off course. Well, today, we're taking the necessary next step. We are putting a hard price on that drift. We detected the system getting worse. Now we're asking exactly what that operational deterioration is actually costing you out in the real world. And this whole dynamic leads us directly into a massive strategic danger. If your cost map is fundamentally incomplete, your corporate strategy is navigating with completely false coordinates. Think about it. You can make executive decisions that feel incredibly smart, highly popular, and totally logical to management in the boardroom, but because those decisions are based on a fundamentally flawed map, they're systematically moving the entire company in the exact wrong direction. Let's look at exactly how that wrong map destroys actual business value. Just picture a quick comparison between two customer profiles. Customer A brings in huge top-line revenue, but they demand constant custom adjustments, endless handholding from support, and they trigger rework constantly. Meanwhile, customer B pays significantly less upfront, but they fit your standard operating process perfectly. If you're only looking at top-line revenue, customer A looks like your absolute bestseller. But when you evaluate the actual economic contribution, that high-revenue bestseller might actually be your most toxic, margin-destroying business unit. Now, a super common excuse management uses to ignore this entire reality is to just say, well, we can't measure it perfectly, so we'll just leave it off the spreadsheet. But listen, just because you cannot measure a soft cost down to the exact penny does not mean its economic impact is magically zero. Actually, assigning a zero to an unknown cost is literally the most mathematically inaccurate thing you can do to your business. At the same time, we do have to remember a critical rule. False precision isn't truth. The goal here is not to invent fake exact decimals for abstract things like employee stress or brand reputation. We definitely don't need a spreadsheet pretending that a 2-day delay cost exactly $4,327.19. What we need are defensible estimates. Use broad ranges if you have to. A defensible estimate that openly acknowledges a systemic problem is infinitely more truthful than a zero that simply pretends the problem doesn't exist. So how do we actually fix this? We use the full cost leak map framework. And just to be clear, this is not some generic accounting tutorial. This is a highly practical operational tool used to systematically identify, quantify, and eliminate these hidden value destroyers. The progression is super straightforward. We capture, trace, price, rank, correct, reprice, and retest. Let's walk through how this actually functions in reality. It all starts right at the source. You absolutely have to stop the assumption that untracked costs are zero. First, capture the recurring evidence of friction in your daily operations. Then trace that symptom all the way back to its origin. Don't just look at the rework happening today. Ask exactly what upstream process created that rework yesterday. Once you trace the source of the leak, you can start to find the real approximate price of that operational failure. Once you've priced and ranked those leaks, it's time for some operational responses. You start by fixing the absolute biggest leak first. You delete steps that don't create any actual value for the customer. You automate predictable manual work, and you heavily redesign fragile workflows that just keep breaking. And I want to note something very important here. The core goal is creating better systems and proper value allocation. This is never about blind cost cutting or just firing people to make a spreadsheet look momentarily good. After you correct the system, you must reprice and retest. This phase is absolutely vital. Pricing your services without fully understanding your real delivery economics can make a terrible, unprofitable offer look incredibly appealing on paper. You have to ensure that your pricing model actually reflects the full, real-world reality of delivering your product successfully, from start to finish. So, how do we force this entire process to actually happen in the real world instead of just talking about it? Enter the negative price guarantee, represented by this blue -1 tag. This is the ultimate forcing function for your business. When you make a public promise to your customers that if value is missing, the price goes negative, meaning you pay them, it creates an immediate, explicit economic consequence. It makes continued delusion simply too expensive for your company to maintain. But here is the brilliant secret about that guarantee. The visible financial penalty of paying out a claim isn't actually the disaster. It's just the alarm bell. Think about it. If you have to pay $1,000 penalty to a customer, that penalty might actually be exposing $30,000 in hidden, recurring rework, delays, and eventual churn. The visible penalty is almost always cheaper than the massive, invisible system failure it exposes. And all of this connects directly back to your overall acquisition economics. Hidden costs aggressively consume the exact profit margin that was supposed to finance your future reinvestment. If you're constantly leaking capacity and money through bad processes, you simply do not have the financial resources required to fuel real customer retention, encourage repeat purchases, and drive that compounding long-term growth. So if you want to stop running your entire business strategy on false coordinates, you can use NegBook and the -1 Diagnostic. These are incredibly practical, specialized tools designed specifically to help you map your full system economics, trace exactly where your valuable resources are actually being consumed, and permanently stop funding fake profit. Because ultimately, tracking full cost economics isn't about mere austerity. The overarching goal is not necessarily to build a cheaper business that cuts corners. The goal is to build a rational, economically truthful business, one where your hard-earned investments actually creating compounding value, instead of just endlessly plugging invisible leaks.
I want to leave you with a final thought to take away from this explainer. Look closely at the reality of your own profit spreadsheets. You are already paying the hidden costs. The only question is whether your decisions admit they exist.